In this third video, we're going to take a look at how you can use C# programming language to create tasks, create code that will perform SQL tasks. So C# has been around for a long time. It's a pretty easy language to learn. There's a lot to work on to master it, of course, but it's a nice language. It's similar to C, C++, Java, JavaScript. It's all in the C style or C family of languages. And if you already have done the SSS tutorial, then you've already had a little experience with C# because there was a C# task in there, actually two, a script task and a script component. Both of them used C#. What I want to talk about here is how you could use a C# application or create a C# application that could use for working with SQL. So that's what we'll do next. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a new project. Go up to File, New Project in Visual Studio. And I will choose to create a C# project, and I'll use a console application for this demonstration. Now, when this comes up, it looks similar to what you saw in the script task or the script component of SSS, in that you have a main method that you put code into. With this, you can do things like, let's see here. What should I have it do? Well, it's a console application, so I'm going to have it write to the console. Oops. Console.writeLine, and have it write test. This language, you do have to have semicolons at the end. Other than that, though, that's pretty much it. So I can then go through and start it. It will pop up a console window, show test, and shut down. Now that's not very much fun, so what I'll do is I'll use console.read to have it pause. Okay, so I have written some code here, and the way you run this code is you hit the start button, and what will happen is it'll print out some text for console.writeLine, and it will pause to read input with console.readLine. Now the input will go into the variable, and I can use it for whatever I want to do. If I just want to print out the result, I can do so. But in this environment, if I run it and open it and close it and put in some data, you won't see it happening. There's a way to get around that. You can actually go up and say start without debugging, and it will leave the window open. But ultimately what's happening is that this type of application is creating an exe. So if you open up the folder for the project, you'll find the binary folder, and it's making a exe for you. And that exe, basically, when you double click on it and run it, it runs and closes down the window. But you could open up a command window and run that executable from there, like it would be when it's all done. And in that case, it doesn't close down automatically. With these type of applications, these console applications, they work basically like the SQL CMD. You're just making your very own custom one, in which case you can submit things like SQL code. So I'm going to write some C# code that will allow me to connect to SQL Server, and then go ahead and execute some SQL code. So I'll show you how to do that in just a second. I just got to write the code. I'll see you back in just a second. Okay, so here's some code I wrote. Basically, I took the code that we saw over in the PowerShell demo and converted it into pure C# code. So I tried to keep it as close as possible to that structure so we can compare apples to apples, so to speak. At the beginning, I'm just declaring variables. I'm using the var keyword instead of actually strongly typing it like I prefer. And it works just to keep it simple and, again, similar to what you would see from PowerShell. I make a new connection object. I configure the connection string with the name of the server and the name of the database, and using integrated security, Windows security. I make a new command object and indicate what the query should be. And I hook up the connection object to the command object. I then make a data adapter and tell it what SQL command to run. And I create a new data set to receive the results. To get the results, I fill the data set, and then once I have the data set full of data, I can close the connection and process it. I just get a new row of data for each row in the table. You can have multiple tables in a data set, so indicating table 0 is just a simple way of telling it which table in the data set to get. And I just write it out to the screen by using console.writeline. This is the same code as we saw over here. Make the connection object, make the command object, make the data object, and then for each row in the data set, table 0, go ahead and just print out it. It automatically prints the results to screen here as output. But I also have the command to write to XML on the hard drive. In CSharp, it would be almost the same. As you can see, learning one language makes it much easier to learn another. And although they are different, they are very similar. One of the reasons why they're very similar is because they're both using the .NET framework. But to tell you the truth, if I were to write this out in Python, for example, it wouldn't be that far off either. So if I run this, go ahead and run this, it will write to the console window the results of that query. It'll also, because I've got here at the bottom that same code where you have to hit enter to exit, wait for me to hit enter and close. And if I go down to the hard drive, I'll see that our data set has written this data currently. We saw that earlier. I'll just go ahead and close it just to make sure that I got it working. And then go back in here and we'll see, sure enough, it reappears and there's our data. So you can see that working with CSharp would be similar. Now, if I wanted to do something like interact with the operating system, I've got commands for that. If I want to submit a command to back up a database, I can just go ahead and say backup database to and tell the name of the file. Basically the same code that I used over here to force the backup to occur can be done there. It's just that if I'm running, if I run this code from PowerShell, oops, I didn't want to do that. I want to run the entire script. I just want to run a portion of the script. Thank you very much. It should go through, perform the backup. And submit it to that folder. Let's see. And that's our current time. Excellent. Now, if I want to see what kind of code is actually being processed, I can open up SQL Profiler. So I'll change it to SQL duration, which will capture statements as they get submitted to the server and show me the text data. So I want to run that. And what we're looking for is what occurs when you run a script like this, because it just says backup database and you don't know what code's being submitted. But behind the scenes, it's actually submitting SQL code. If I come back over here and I look at this, this is the code it submits. It's not the best code in the world, but you didn't have to write it. So if I were to, I'll stop the trays right now. If I were, you get back there. If I were to copy this code, I could use my CSharp application to submit that same statement. Now, I got to tell you, this statement was really not all that great. For one thing, it has a lot of extra stuff. So with no format, doesn't really help me much. With no skip and rewind, doesn't help me much either. No unload, not much use, and stats, not much use either. Without going into what they are, it suffices to say that they're mostly working with tape drives. The other thing you'll notice is that I need to escape these slashes. I just put in 2 and I'm escaped. When I run a backup statement, I'm not filling up a data set, so I can comment that code out. I also won't be using a SQL data adapter and comment that code out. Basically, I'm just going to submit a backup database statement, so I can change this code quite a bit. Let's see, let me think here for a second. Let's see, what do I need? I don't need these statements, so let me change that and simplify this. I've got a command object, SQL CMD, and I'm going to execute non-query. Non-query means to perform an action. You're not getting any results back. When I'm done with executing a command, I really should go ahead and close the connection. So I'll do that. If you don't, it will forgive you, but it's not best coding practice. That's it. So with just those few lines, it should make a connection to the server, and in this case, connect to whatever database I tell it to, Northwind. I don't have to actually be in the Northwind database to back it up. It doesn't really matter. And then submit that code. Let's make sure it works. Invalid operation requires an open connection. Well, that would do it. The data adapter was taking care of a number of things, and one of them was opening the connection. When you call the fill method of the data adapter, it opens the connection for you automatically. Okay, that should work better. Hit enter. And we come back over here, we should see our backup file. Yes, that's exactly right. Now, if that is in place, we could use code like this to automate that backup. If I'm doing automation, I probably don't want to have it manually pause. So I'll just get rid of all that. And if you look at it, we actually don't need a lot of this code. I could just take that out, completely end up with a lot less code to work with. And if I want to, I could make it so that we have arguments. So with an argument, just like we do when we pass in code to SQL CMD, we could type in, so this would be console.app.demo.exe, it would be our own custom program, and we could pass in the name of the server, the name of the database, and the query, just like we did with SQL command mode. So if I want to set that up, we certainly could do that, and then it would go ahead and run whatever code we want. And then once to automate it, basically we can do that in a variety of ways. The big trick is that we need the exe. So I take that exe, and copy it to a location I can get to. And then you could just double click on it. It would perform the action. So if I go looking at that The backup folder, I can see that 9:12, that's its current time, so it did actually make that. I could go through and use a execute process task. An execute process task would point to my executable. So like here is an example I made from a previous module in our course, where I go through and I create a console application that takes some data in a file and split it into two text files. One has valid email addresses and one has invalid email addresses. Once I make that exe, I just go ahead and execute that exe. If I have arguments to pass in, such as the query I want to run or the name of the server, etc., I just go ahead and put it right there. Yeah, we go ahead and run that. Now that would be an SSIS, but if I want to use Task Scheduler, it works the same way. I can just go through and set up a new task. Did I get rid of test already? Yeah, I'm not seeing test over here. Yep. Let's see, I want to new action. I want to start our program. It's going to be C:, data to process. I don't know why I'm doing this. I should browse it. There it is. And if I had any arguments, I'd put those in there. I don't think we need anything else for this, so it's just a matter of saying OK and testing that out. Let's give it a try. Get rid of this. Back over here. Okay. Schedule this to run. Yay. Now see, I need to build a new version of that, one that doesn't pause, because otherwise that will be an issue. Yeah. So to do that, I need to come back into Visual Studio. I'll go ahead and build a new version. And that means that I also want to copy that new binary file, the exe, copy that, and I'll replace that and we'll try that test again. Okay. So it worked, it's just that we don't want that to pause. And there we go. Awesome. Now we just schedule it and it's ready to go. And of course, we can do the same thing from SQL Server Agent. We just have to go in and schedule this to run as an executable, just like we did with SQL command utility. It's just that now we've made our own command utility. I will go to SQL Server Agent, locate my test job, and reconfigure it. On the steps, I will change the type of task or step to a operating system command. And then I've just got to change the command to point to that exe. That's not going to work. I need to actually type in the code. So the code will be pointing to that exe in that folder. So let me type that in. And with that typed in, I will, let's see, anything else? I don't think so. So let's just hit OK. And we will test it. Get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. And we will test this. Let's see here. Okay. Delete the backup file. Start the step. It runs, and the backup file should appear. There it is. Excellent. So I could execute my C# code in a execute process task. In SSIS, I could use the Windows Task Scheduler. I could use SQL Server Agent, just like we saw with PowerShell and the SQL command mode. As I said at the beginning, this set of videos is a part of curriculum I use. I'm just making it publicly available in case people find it would be useful. But we've looked at Task Scheduler, the execute process task in SSIS, how you could use SQL Server, SQL command mode, how PowerShell might work, C#, and SQL Profiler. That was the goal of these 3 videos. And hopefully now that you have seen these, you understand how you could use non-SQL code to perform SQL tasks. And hopefully you'll find that useful. I think you will. And I want to thank you for watching. Take care.